Hi, I'm Stacy.
And I am Mark, and this is the Gurus and Game Changers podcast.
Wow,
Welcome.
This is so awesome.
This is awesome. Yeah,
Our first
welcome,
live
Gurus.
show.
Welcome, Game Changers. It's a hallmark moment for us because we were able to partner with Market.live, and for the first time, we are broadcasting live at Mainline Studios, where we normally do the show, in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
I'm sure.
But we are here live, so if you're watching us, you're probably watching us on Market.live, but you can also jump on our social media channels or their social media channel. And if you are watching, who's watching the chat? George, is that you? John's got the chat. If you want to engage us in conversation, we'd love to hear your questions for us or for our guest, the wonderful Hilary Russo. And we are thrilled to have Hilary in studio for a live because we do feel like you need to hear from her today. Like we all need to hear what Hilary has to say today because what happened? We woke up this morning, strain, stress, pressure, anxiety. We all know what's happening in the world. We all know the stresses of living everyday life and the pressures and all of that. And it's hard to deal with. We all deal with it in our own way. But Hilary's dedicated her life. She's got a mission to help people do exactly that, right? And in her words, to put the healing, the ability to heal in their hands.
Nice,
Right?
Mark.
And the heal,
Good one.
it's not necessarily from trauma, but it is. But it's also, how do you turn your brain off so you can sleep better? Does that sound familiar? It's also, how do I engage better with my family? Or how do I deal with the jerk that I work with? No, sorry. You just happen to be sitting there. or anything like that, right? And those are big concepts that, who do you want to have help you? How about somebody who's a certified holistic health coach? Somebody who's certified in havening techniques. What is havening? I don't know. We're going to talk about it. But there's only a handful of them collectively in the world. We're sitting next to one. She's a hypnotherapist. She's a practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, college professor. She's an international speaker. She's been on countless live TV shows and featured in magazines, and her resume is super long. But all of this has given her a wonderful perspective, an incredible experience, and I promise you, if you listen to what she has to say, if you put into place and engage with some of the things that we're going to talk about today, your tomorrow can be instantly better.
And that's our podcast.
That's it. And good night. So welcome, Hilary Russo.
Yay.
How you doing?
Raji.
Welcome.
Daisy Grant, thank
Hey,
you.
what's all new? What's new and good?
What's new and good?
What's new and
Definitely
good?
pay attention. That's my line.
Why is that your line? Tell us. I
use
know
it-
it's your line.
I'll tell you exactly why it's my line, but I love that you're using it, and I love when I hear people using it because when you start the day with what's new and good instead of asking, how are you, what's up, you're actually engaging and promoting, you're actually telling somebody that you want to hear more from them rather than, what do you usually hear back when you hear what's up? How are you doing?
Yeah,
It's a one
good.
line, I'm fine, good, everything's well. But when you say what's new and good, you're actually encouraging someone to share more about what is new and what is good in their lives. I won't actually accept the answer of nothing from my students or my clients or really anyone I talk to because I want them to get in the space of there's always something to be good and new in your life. Yeah, definitely.
I want to start a conversation with them in a good place.
Yeah.
And getting in a good place, what do you think is the quickest way to get in a good place? I mean, it's not easy.
That remembering the things that you're grateful for, and what better time to do that than the month of November, which is National Gratitude
National
Month,
Gratitude Month.
Yeah. So wait,
which should be every day and every month.
It really should be.
I was reading or seeing that you have a gratitude jar. Do you still have that jar?
I do.
Is it like loaded up with, because that was
These
like
folks are stalking
2,000
me.
times totally stalking. Oh, you don't know these questions. I'm totally stalking you.
I do. I have a joy jar. I call
Oh,
it
it's
a
joy
joy
now,
jar.
not gratitude.
Yeah, and like every day or every week, depending, I would put like a note. It could be like the simplest thing, and most people don't know where it is. Most people, like, it's my jar, and I put something in there, and then at the end of the year, the last day of the year, I will read everything that I put in that jar.
Every single thing.
Because you're promoting gratitude by doing that. You're reminding yourself when things get low, when you are uncertain about something, when the day isn't going as well as expected, when you sit there and you look through that jar, whether you're doing it once a week, once a month, or even just whenever you can, you're reminded of the things you're actually grateful for. And
do you have a time of day you do this, like every day, or like in the first thing in the morning? Because they say start your day with gratitude.
I'll
First
tell you-
thing in the morning.
Well, first thing I do in the morning, and
Yeah.
really this is scientifically proven, and this was done. It was a Harvard Research Reviews study that was done by. You might have heard of this book, which is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. If you start your day with 2 minutes of gratitude before you even put your feet on the floor.
What? Why are you looking at me?
341. That's what I do. Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
The 2 minutes before you put your feet on the floor, you start your day with 2 minutes of gratitude. You have a 27% more likelihood of having a good day 6 to 8 hours later. That compared to those people that grab their phone real quick for 3 minutes, open the newspaper, run to turn on the television, start your day with 2 minutes. That's 1 minute that you're putting on the table, but it's also 27%.
That's an incredible number if you think about it.
So 2 minutes of gratitude, start your day. Doesn't have to be journaling, which is a great thing to do, but it could be anything. It could really be anything that just brings you a sense of joy and happiness.
So do the holidays bring us joy and happiness? Because I was just going to
Depends on
ask,
the
like,
family
holiday
involved.
seasons upon us.
Depends on your-
So what are some of the ways that people can, feel good around the holidays?
Well, in any holiday,
they don't
really. Like this is
necessarily.
kind of the beginning of holiday season is November, right? When we think about it. The things that can bring you joy is just remember that, the simple things, like gratitude. And when I ask what's new and good, it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something as small as I have a warm place to stay. I have friends and family that want me to spend time with them. A lot of times we go to the negative, and it's really important for us to reframe the narrative on things, right? When you're thinking, oh, I have to host this party. It's like, but you have people coming to your party that said yes.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, that one family member that is going to be there. Okay, then you can make a choice to sit elsewhere, but maybe that one family member just needs somebody to talk to, and they're choosing you, right? If it's not a positive situation, if there's somebody that's crossing boundaries, because a lot of times in the holiday season, we think about boundaries being crossed. When are you getting married? Right?
When are you having a
oh
baby?
my gosh,
Oh my God,
Uncle Bob just keeps talking about his maladies. Yes, there are the people in our family that were like,
Or
oh
politics.
my goodness. Right, or politics, like religion and politics are the two big things that come up, right? And sometimes personal issues. You can create boundaries for yourself, and I think that's really important. And when you create boundaries, you actually are building your own self-empowerment. It doesn't mean you have to say no to everything, but saying yes to yourself can sometimes mean saying no to others.
Yeah.
That's important to protect
sure.
your own emotional well-being.
I've always thought that being grateful is empowering if you can be grateful. So you said, I have to go to this party versus I get to host a party.
Right.
So when I had 2 shoulder surgeries back to back, year after year, and I kept saying to myself, yeah, it's a pain in the neck, and yes, it's going to hurt, but I get to have the surgery. There are many people dealing with this, and I don't work for a living, blue collar. So I have the opportunity to benefit from having the surgery. It really did change my mindset. It actually changed my son's. He's like, well, that's a good way to look at that. So I was helpful. I was happy that I was able to help him frame his mindset and work with him on that.
Absolutely. It's totally changing. And imagine those people and I've been in this position before, and I'm sure you have as well. There are times you don't have anywhere to go, right? Some people are lonely during the holidays. That's another really big thing.
Yeah.
So this is a time for self-reflection. Why am I being given this gift of time? What can I do to celebrate time with myself? It does begin within. A big thing that I talk about, especially with my Hug It Out program, which is an acronym for healing, understanding, and gratitude, is that if you don't begin with the self-healing, the understanding of self, and the self-gratitude of what I'm grateful for that I bring to my own life and others around me, where else can it begin? It doesn't start outside. We always tend to talk about the gratitude that comes from outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
But if you're not starting here, what is it all for?
Yeah.
So with the Hug It Out program, are you literally hugging people? Like what?
It's
I mean, 'cause
interesting.
I'm coming.
Hugs are always a great thing. It's
Yeah.
oxytocin. That's the love hormone, right? That's a big part of my practice as a havening practitioner. Is that it does include the hugging and self-hugging, really, to self-soothe, to self-regulate. But that's just a part of it. Like when I use the hug as an acronym, who doesn't want to hug it out? We always think about,
I love it.
when we think about hugging it out, right? Hugging it out when you're in an upset or kerfuffle with somebody, right? And
Good
somebody,
word,
you like that
kerfuffle.
kerfuffle?
Yeah, I like that. That's good, okay.
Somebody comes along, they're like, oh, you guys don't have to get along, but maybe you just hug it out. Get over it in a way is what we're saying. But if you're not making amends with yourself, with your own mind, where does it begin? So you make amends with other people all the time, but we are so hard on ourselves, me included. I'm really hard on myself sometimes.
That's the
And
toughest thing, I think, is self-compassion.
Yes, and the inner bully. The inner bully on the playground is so starting within. And I have to check myself constantly because it comes from somewhere else. Like, where is it coming from? Probably my younger part of myself, my inner child. Like, I always encourage my clients to get in touch with the younger part of themselves. Like, who's showing up right now? Is it Hilary at 12 years old where she felt like she wasn't invited to the lunch table? Is it Hillary, just using it as an example.
Oh, okay, that wasn't true.
Like, no, I was
You're heartbroken. Just like that.
She's like
Oh,
major empathetic compassion. Oh, Hillary, you
Hillary.
can sit at my lunch table. But it's that kind of thing, like getting in touch with, being able to step back and take a moment and being like, is this, there's a really awesome thing I learned early, even before I got into the emotional well-being and mental health field, is that the think method. Like when you start telling yourself stories, you have to ask yourself 5 things. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? The think method. And you've probably heard this before, but I say it all the time to myself. Like, think first, right? If am I talking ill of myself? Am I saying unkind things about myself? We're so careful of how we speak to other people, but if you're not speaking kindly to yourself, you're breaking that first rule of self-gratitude.
Totally.
And
look, we got some comments here. Clem says, "Hi guys, love this." Hey Clem, nice
Hi,
to see
Clem.
you. And Cassie, love the joy jar idea. So do I.
Oh,
I'm
yay.
actually
Hi,
going to do
Cassie.
that. Yeah.
Oh, definitely try
Yeah.
it. And you can do it anytime. You can do it once a day. You can do it once a week. If you don't have time, you just do it when you remember.
Yeah.
Just keep a little piece of paper, put it somewhere, and then make it make it a family thing too. I encourage people to do it with their
Good idea.
kids.
Yeah.
You know?
Can we go back to young Hillary?
Young Hillary.
That wasn't invited to the lunch table.
Yeah, poor
Wait, was
12-year-old.
that true? Like, okay, so we
No.
joke around about it,
Right.
but I mean, I know that you struggled with some stuff when you were a kid.
Sure.
So what would you tell your young Hillary self now about those
Right.
struggles?
Now
Oh, that's
know.
a really good question. I think at different parts in my life, I have to sit back and think. If I were to tell my younger self something right now, it'd be, it's all going to be okay.
Right.
And you are heard, you are valid, you are loved, right? And just remind yourself that there was a phrase that I learned when I was living in Louisiana. I was still a news anchor down in Louisiana. I remember there was another news anchor there, and he'd say, "It ain't nothing but a chicken wing." And it like means nothing, but it means something. Like, it ain't nothing but a
no
chicken
big
wing.
deal.
It doesn't mean anything,
Right.
right? Like, we put so much emphasis on the little things. And I think if I could tell my younger self something, it would be like, it's all good. You're okay,
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we make so many small things so much bigger than they are,
Everything works out.
Everything always
And
works
it's not
out.
necessarily the outcome you wanted, but guess
No.
what? 10 years from now, it's not going to matter.
Absolutely. There's a phrase out there, there's a quote, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your
Tell 'em your
plans.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about this positive self-talk.
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of that. For myself, I try to stress that in my family. And tell us some success stories that you've had helping people reframe how they talk to themselves so that they've been able to achieve whatever it is they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
I think we all struggle with that,
Yeah.
and I remember specifically, I have a client who's a Metropolitan Opera singer for 10 years, Grammy Award winner. And she was really struggling with the identity of certain things that she was confronted with as a young child, and fearing things because of an injury that happened to her as a young child. And then later that kind of followed along with her to the stage where there were certain points where she didn't feel comfortable on the stage because of something that might have gone awry at some point when she was on the stage singing. And I think when you start telling yourself, I can't do that again, I'm going to get hurt,
Right.
rather like reframe it to, I have the skills, I have the ability, I'm very good at what I do, I know how to be cautious and take steps, right? That's one thing. So that was a really powerful thing. And also, having a client once that was really scared to go into the MRI. Right?
Yeah.
The fear of that claustrophobic, that fear really is very common, and
It's very real.
right, it's very real. Like you're in
Especially
the
if you're
space.
claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Like I have friends that,
Absolutely, and just reminding yourself, like, I'm here, and like doing havening while you're going into it, and just saying, I'm safe, I'm with people that know what they're doing, and just be very present. Like, I know I'm here because I have the ability, almost like you were saying, to get the surgery, right? To actually have this exam done to help my well-being.
Yeah.
A lot of it's really just reframing.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of everything, because if you start going down that rabbit hole,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Right?
a spiral.
Well,
It's a spiral.
Yeah, it's
Our
a
brain
spiral.
is
Talk about
designed to
havening?
go there.
Yeah. So havening,
Yeah.
it sounds like
Let's talk about
it's
it,
the
'cause
next
no,
level
no.
of
Yeah.
self-talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you use positive self-talk. It is involved in that, but basically, havening is a transitive verb for haven, which means a safe place. Our brain is designed to go to the negative. Our brain does not like uncertainty.
So mean.
Why
does it
right?
do it?
So, like, what happens is we call her Amy in the world of havening. Amy, the amygdala,
Yeah.
is going to take you to the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? And the uncertainty that we feel in any day situation, going into the MRI, taking a test, going to work, auditioning for a play, being in front of the camera for the
First
first
live
time,
show.
first live show, driving, flying. There's so many fears out there
Yeah.
that people have. Getting back into the dating scene, whatever it is, those fears of uncertainty push us into that state of, I'm not doing that, that's unsafe. So Amy is thinking, I'm not safe here. Havening, that transitive verb, haven, it means a safe place. You're actually changing your thoughts, moods, behaviors, and habits. You are putting your brain in what they call a delta wave state, which is sleep state, because you can't find the calm and the chaos. So when you do havening, which is almost like you are washing your hands, giving yourself a hug, or even gently giving yourself a facial.
Do it, Mark.
Right, just do it with us.
Do it,
Come
Mark.
on, Mark. Do it along. When you think of when you're in a moment where you're feeling a little upset or anxiousness,
close your eyes?
You can. When you do this, and maybe just count to 10 or count to
That's
20,
good.
and think of something that brings you joy. So like if your place is the beach, or if you love the mountains, or maybe it's your home, and you just find like 20 things within that space that brings you joy, like seashells, calm waters, the sunshine. You are basically changing the brain's neuroplasticity. You're letting Amy know she's safe. You're basically changing everything. You're changing the narrative within your brain.
What is the touch doing that the positive self-talk
Sure.
can't accomplish?
So
on its
this
own?
is what you're doing is you're leveling up. You are actually releasing oxytocin, which is the love hormone.
Got it.
Serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. Those are the happy hormones.
right.
So when you release all those hormones, you're letting Amy know, I'm okay, I'm safe, the worst is over. And then you're putting your brain in what they call the delta wave state, like I mentioned, which is your sleep state. When you pair the touch together with a positive distraction,
Yeah.
you are rewiring the brain.
I love it.
And it can happen like that
So
in
how
minutes.
did you find this?
Yeah,
Like
right.
I have
Well,
never
that's a
heard
good
of this
story.
havening
Right.
until I
Neither
met
did I.
you. And now like I'm so intrigued. So how did it happen?
So havening kind of met me in a bar.
Oh,
Yeah. So I was already a
Wait, no,
holistic-
seriously?
I swear to God, Hilary and Havening walked into a bar. That's basically how it
okay.
happened. Yeah. So I was in New York City, and I was at a 50th birthday party for a mutual friend, the young lady who was already she's an executive within the Havening community. We had a mutual friend who was having her birthday there. And you know what happens when you meet people? Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, what do you do for a living, right? That's basically how it went. I was getting ready to leave, and Feliciana, who is the COO of the Havening organization, she said, she asked me what I did. I shared with her, I'm a holistic health coach. I'm also a health and wellness journalist. And I said, what do you do? She goes, can I show you? And I was like, all right, well, Saturday night, go ahead.
Sure.
put my whiskey over here.
Let me
yeah.
just put the drink down.
Excuse me.
And she said, may I touch you? And I said, sure. And she just started havening me, because what you can do, havening can also be facilitated by the practitioner.
Okay.
It can be self-applied, which is great, because then you're self-regulating yourself. We should know how to self-soothe ourselves. But she did it to me on my arms, on my hands, and she just said, think of something that just brings you joy, something that makes you happy. This is havening. And she explained what it was. And like within minutes of me just like taking myself to that place that brings me joy, after bringing up an upset, she said, what's been irking you for a while? I thought of that. And then within minutes, I was like, what just happened? I don't know, whatever you did to me, but I want more of
Wow.
it. I wound up going to the 2-day workshop to learn more about it, which was hosted by the co-developing doctors, Dr. Steve and Ron Rudin, who to this day are mentors of mine. And because I studied with them, I studied with the co-founding doctors. And I went to this event that they were hosting, and I volunteered to be demoed on stage on the grief of my dad.
Wow.
And I said, if this works, then I'm in. And so I got up there in front of like 100 people that were there getting the initial certification. It's a long process. I mean, you do your case studies, you But for the 2-day introductory workshop, I was like, all right, I'll do it. I got up on stage, and my dad had been gone, I don't know, 15, 16 years at that point. And Dr. Ron Rudin hated me. And after that, I never really looked at that passing the same way again. I really struggled with my father's death because he was diabetic. He died of a massive heart attack in Schubert Alley in New York City. And I always was somebody who came from a place of fear of losing my dad. That was my fear.
I totally
That was it.
vibe with that.
Having a sick father my whole life,
Yeah.
I lived with the uncertainty that my father was going to always die. And that day changed everything.
Wow.
Now it's like I have complete closure. I don't get emotional like I used to. It's not that it's getting rid of the loss, because the loss is there. It's allowing me to change the narrative on how I see that my father's passed. He lived a long life. I had 61 years with him, or I had 29 years with him, and it's okay. All is well,
I was reading about that and listening to your story, and could you tell the story about when you picked up the phone?
Oh,
If you can.
you mean when I was doing the telethon?
Yes.
Yeah, that was an episode I did on holistically
Yes.
speaking. That was a powerful one. That was the last time I talked to my dad.
Yeah.
So I was living in North Carolina at the time, and I was doing a telethon because I worked for PBS, UNC TV for a number of years. And I did a number of different telethons for different television companies that did that. But I was on air that one day doing a telethon, and I had a friend that was with me that was sitting in the studio audience, and my phone rang, and I was like, I'll get it later. And my friend's like, your dad's on the phone. I'm like, I'll call him back. And he was so insistent that I took the call. He's like, you've got 5 minutes of commercial time. I took the call. I'm so glad I did.
Wow.
And it was my dad. And he was like, I'm going to a Broadway show. I'll give you a call later. And like the last words I got to say to my father were, I love you. But that was the last time I saw my dad or spoke to my dad, because he died of a heart attack that evening. So the moral of the story is pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone. You just
Pick up the
never
phone.
know.
You never know.
Life is short.
Like, what is so busy in your life that you have to do? And I think about that a lot, because sometimes I don't pick up the phone still. But the thought is there in my mind, what is this call about? Like, I pick up my mom's calls. Like,
Every time.
I really do.
Every time Mark calls me, I pick up.
That's fair. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
But you know what I'm
that's,
saying?
That's
Like,
insane.
You really have to think about those things, because tomorrow's never promised.
Yeah.
And what is so busy in your life that you can't do that? And for that moment, when I was 20-something years old and almost didn't pick up that call, to this day, it's like there was something that said, do it.
Yeah.
And I did. And the last words I got to share with my father, as he did with me, was, I love you, Hill, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Oh.
And then the next call I got was that night.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God.
I
And you
have
say you
closure
kept
from
the
that.
ticket.
Yeah.
Do you still have
I
the
do.
ticket?
I don't have it with me,
Ah.
but I do. I have the Broadway ticket that my father had untouched to Thoroughly Modern Millie, which was one of my favorite Broadway shows that was starring Sutton Foster. And I keep it in my pocket, because there's a line in that show, I'll always have a ticket in my pocket to do with as I choose.
Whoa.
About it.
That's
It's-
crazy.
And it's the train ticket that she had in the show when
Wow.
she moved to New York City to make it as an actress. Yeah.
That's wild. I never remember when my father passed, everybody wants to say, oh, he's in a better place. You hear
Yeah.
the same thing. And it's fine, because people don't know what to say. I get
Right.
that. I understand it fully. One person, she's actually a host on QVC, a wonderful woman, Mary Beth Rowe.
Mm-hmm.
She said to me, you're not going to get over it. Don't try. Don't
Yeah.
listen to what anybody
Yeah.
says. All you can do is just make room for it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just such a wonderful way to
Oh,
live.
I
It
love
changed
that.
my perspective that
Yeah.
moment. Like, I can deal with the grief, that's fine, but I just have to make room for it and go on with life.
Create the space.
Create the
Wow.
space.
When you
Yeah.
create the space for the positive, it allows more space for the positive to come in. When you fill it with the negative, you're mucking things up. The other thing that's a really beautiful way to share when I have people that tell me that they lost someone, of course we want to say we're sorry, right? But what are we sorry for? We're sorry for your loss. Encourage them to tell a story.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
the
gosh,
best.
You just
Yeah.
like, I love when people are like, I know your father through you, or I loved when your dad did this. You
Yeah.
know, so when people lose somebody, I'm always like, tell me something really awesome about
Yeah.
him.
And you
or
want
her.
to just talk about them
Right.
incessantly. You
Because
feel,
that One of my favorite movies that really reminds me of my dad was Big Fish. Remember? Did
Oh
you
my
ever
gosh,
see Big
yeah.
Fish?
Yeah.
And
Albert
there's-
Finney. Yeah, it was a great movie.
And the whole story of
Right.
that movie is that it's the son not wanting to hear his dad's stories
Stories,
because
yeah.
they weren't real. But how boring would they have been to just be the son of a salesman, right?
Right,
So
right.
he made everything glorified and embellished to make the stories interesting to a child, right? But his son took that with him into adulthood. But the line in that movie that really sticks with you, the tagline is, a man tells so many stories in his life that he becomes his stories, and in that way he becomes immortal. So the whole idea is to continue telling those stories of the people that are no longer here.
So he's
That is
wonderful.
the best advice, because
Yeah.
I know when I was sad when my dad died and someone came and said, "Oh, Wally, he was awesome. Like he would do this, like he was a whirling dervish or whatever."
Yeah.
That gave me something to think about, other than the fact that he wasn't there anymore.
Right,
You know?
but tell their stories, and then they are constantly at the table. And I think that's what I thought about when I first learned havening. Like when I have him, I still talk to my dad all the time, and I'll sit there and like I sit in the silence and I haven and I think of like a really beautiful, moment with him, or just a beautiful moment of my own, and I just imagine like I ask the questions, and when you sit in silence, the answers come. Like
Yeah.
when you sit in silence and let your brain just be calm in the moment and bring it down, and that it helps with the havening. The answers do come because you cannot find the calm in the chaos. It's impossible. So you've got to bring it down.
Yeah.
So you have said many times on your website and your podcast, it's really important to be kind to your mind. So it's not as much of a calling card as what's new and good, but it's something that you're a big proponent of. What does that mean, being kind to your mind?
I think that also goes back to the positive self-talk.
Yeah.
I think it also goes back to, are you believing everything that you're saying to yourself,
Yeah.
right? The think method. And it's also, we have this gut-brain response. We have two brains, basically. You have your microbiome, which is what I deal with holistic integrative nutrition health. And then you have this brain that they're working together. So you really need to be kind to your mind in as much as possible. Look, we're human. We're going to have negative thoughts. The real thing is, how long do you want to stay there?
Yeah.
It's really about how long do you want to take residency in that negative space.
So you just tell yourself, okay, stop thinking that.
Right,
Like what- because aren't you supposed to feel your feelings
you
too?
have to feel your
Because
feelings.
then it's
yes.
like, that's the thing I juggle with. Like, I don't want to think about it. Like, I don't want the negative thoughts, but I'm supposed to feel my feelings.
Feel your feelings, and where is this coming from? Like, what place in my life is this coming from? Like, how old is Stacy when she's showing up and thinking this, right? All right, let me stop for a second. Who's showing up right now? Am I telling myself the truth? Am I really being kind to myself? Go through the think method. Sit there and just instantly think of something that brings you joy, and then just think of something that brings you joy, makes you happy, and suddenly things do tend to change. But the be kind to your mind thing is that, it's really it's the overall, right? It's everything. It's being present with the fact that you're human and you have a right to feel.
Yeah.
Because like the generations before us, the silent generation, before that, get over it.
Get over it.
That's
Yeah.
the last. Or
My dad used
calm
to say,
down.
rub some dirt on it.
Right.
Rub
Or,
some-
yes. Or the calm down thing. Like never in the history of the words calm down has anybody calmed down.
I love
Right?
it.
That's
That
true.
is
Do not
so
tell somebody
true.
to calm down. Like, just let yourself feel
Yeah.
and emote, and for the moment be present with that, and then be like, okay,
Yeah.
how long do I want to stay here? And then, again, it goes back to asking yourself questions. And the really powerful thing I remember learning from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's like my spiritual daddy.
Did you meet
wherever
him
he is.
in person?
No.
Okay.
Don't get me started on
'Cause
that
I would
story,
get,
'cause my
you know.
brother knows him or knew him, and I was
Oh.
like, and
sibling
that was always the
rivalry.
thing I wanted to always meet him. What's that?
A little sibling rivalry.
Right,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but I feel like I do know him. Like I feel like he's around me. He's definitely that spiritual guru, that person that I find such just a real alignment with. But he always said that before you go to bed at night, just like when you wake up with 2 minutes of gratitude in the morning, before you go to bed at night, think of something that brings you joy and happiness and something you want to think about. Do a little havening, right? Like in that moment, because your brain's going to go into subconscious. And when you're in subconscious mind, which havening takes you into as well, when you're in subconscious mind, your brain is constantly thinking of ways to bring solutions to the questions you're asking, answers to the questions you're asking, right? But if you go in there like you turn off the TV after the news, your brain's going to start thinking about that, right?
Right.
you want to go into that moment thinking about things as you settle down. What questions do you want answered? Because then the subconscious starts looking for solutions and answers rather than the devastation, the upset.
Having anxiety around
Right.
it.
You want to settle because when you wake up in the morning,
That's cool.
that subconscious is going to step in and
That's awesome.
and be there to befriend
You.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I'm going to try that tonight.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of, I love the origin story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to find, I really want to find out. So, how did young Hilary make the trajectory to end up here today?
Yeah. Well, Mark knows part of that story. He's been around.
I didn't know young Hilary.
Because I
No,
know,
you didn't
I
know
have your
Hilary.
IMDb information
Oh,
here
boy.
that I'm ready to lay out
Okay.
with you.
So
So you want to come
but
clean, or are we going to come clean for you?
How far back do you want to go? How much time do we have? And what stories should I go
How
to?
were you made? How about that? What forged you to be who you are?
Was it not at the Weight Watchers camp?
was it Weight Watchers
probably
camp?
part of it.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
So for
Sorry.
me, I think as a child, I always felt like I was the kid that always befriended the kid that wasn't popular. I remember
Aw.
being that person that, I grew up in a very affluent, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in an affluent area. I wanted for nothing, but I always worked for a living. Like I was the stable girl at the horse stables. I worked, I did what I could to be independent, right? But I also was like that person that when a new kid moved to town, that was usually, oh, that's the kid that would sit at the unpopular
Right.
table. I'd be like, I'd want to go over and like see
nice.
how they're doing,
Yeah.
Or I was always the friend that was the therapist of all the friends, right? I always thought I'd be a
Surprise,
therapist.
surprise.
I know, right? So like that part of me, and I think growing up with a father who was really dealing with a medical issue my entire life really brought on that sense of compassion and empathy. Because I witnessed a father who was an amputee, was always in the hospital. I did my homework in waiting rooms at hospitals,
Wow.
And my mom was the philanthropist. So I was always around children's hospitals and nonprofit organizations. So I grew up with this sense of philanthropy and I grew up with this sense of empathy and compassion. And I think that really was a big part of my upbringing that I'm so grateful for with both my parents, and just the surroundings, the people that they surrounded themselves with. And as I got older, I was in performing arts. That was a big part of my life. And when I went to college at SMU in Dallas, I actually went into television instead. And I just decided that I really kind of like this whole being the bearer of news, but it's not always positive news,
Yeah.
right? So that was how I got into being in television work and doing on camera and working back in that day. It was like there was ABC, CBS, NBC, maybe Fox. That was it. There was no online anything like that, And I worked my way up from small market to bigger markets, and then 9/11 happened.
Right.
And I was on air that day.
Right.
Wasn't your dad supposed to be working that?
Yeah. Wow, you have done your research.
She's good.
Yes,
She's
my
very good.
father was a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, and he had a deposition planned for 9/11 at 9 a.m. And I got a call right after the first plane hit. As I was getting ready for work, I was still living in Louisiana at the time. I was a morning news anchor, and my dad's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm trying to get to work, but you're on the phone." Dad, I picked up the phone though.
Yeah.
And he said, "You need to get to work right now." And he said, "But turn on the TV." And I turned on the TV and I saw the smoke. I had no idea what was going on. He didn't
Right.
tell me yet. And he's like, "You got to get to work right now."
Yeah.
And I got to work. I got there in time to see the second plane hit, standing there in front of the news feeds.
Wow.
And there are things I imagine have not even been released yet that probably I saw because we saw it real time. I don't even know if there was a 7-second delay. I'm not really sure, but there are things in my head. And that brings to mind the whole reason why I've gotten so deeply involved in secondary traumatic stress and secondary trauma and wanting to help people through that, because that's really the kind of stress that anybody deals with that they're experiencing that somebody else is experiencing firsthand. We weren't at 9/11. We weren't at the Twin Towers. We weren't even in New York, any of us, right? But we watched it and we saw the devastation and we took it in. And it doesn't have to be something as big as 9/11. But my dad was supposed to be in the North Tower that day at 9 a.m. and I found that out after. right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have been if I knew that before and hadn't talked to them.
Wow.
But, coming from New York, my entire family was there, not knowing where anyone was.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go on air that day, all day long, not knowing what was going on. And I didn't have the tools back then. I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't even know what secondary traumatic stress was. So I think that kind of propelled me into it somewhat. And then going through some ups and downs in my own personal life and journeys, and realizing that I want to take really good care of myself. I did go to Weight Watchers Camp, Fat Camp as we called it. We did. There was
So
a
did the
show,
show, yeah.
There was a reality show called
Yeah.
Fat Camp that was actually shot at my camp in Pennsylvania that I went to. But
Bev said, Russo, I'm so happy that your father's been such a positive influence in your life.
well, Mom, you have too. That's totally my mom.
Is that
How
your
many
mom?
Bev Russos
No.
are there in the world?
Oh,
That's
Bev
my
Russo. And then
mom.
I
Thomas.
thought she was calling you
Thomas-
Russo.
Me too.
Russo.
Bev Russo. Hi,
I think
Bev.
that's
Hi,
my mom. Hi,
Hi.
Bev. That's Mama Bev.
Your
And
daughter
then
is awesome.
Thomas says lots of great advice.
You're
Thank
welcome,
you,
Tom.
Thomas.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Mom. My mom's also been a wonderful influence as well. But I love her. That's so
awesome.
funny. Everybody loves Mama Bev. But all of that is so much part of who I've become, because I realized at some point, and I think getting into holistic health happened for me when I was on a show called Daily Burn 365. It was a live streaming fitness show. First ever, Emmy nominated.
Yeah.
And I was cast to be on the show. I was a backup host for the show as well. And it was basically like a fitness show, but we were just shooting the shows. Now there's so many of these live streaming shows, right, for fitness. But it was kind of like the Today Show of fitness.
Wow.
And we had an element where there was a community and a chat, and there were health coaches, and something. I just felt such a pull because I was engaged with so many of the community members who got to know who I was on the show, that I'm like, I like this whole health coaching thing. Like, people are coming to me and asking me questions because they feel like they know me. And that kind of propelled me into wanting to go into holistic health coaching, learn more about how this body can heal itself holistically speaking.
Holistically.
And I got certified in that, and then I met my friend Feliciana at the bar that
Okay.
learned about havening. Then I learned about
that
havening.
happened, and now-
So it all just kind
Yeah.
of trickled, like life's a falling into, as I always say. I'm not planning anything, because when you plan, God laughs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just letting things happen organically. It just seems so much more delightful that way.
But can we talk about Blood Kills?
I don't even remember that movie.
I'm
See,
sorry.
I do not, and by the way, it's Blood Kisses.
Oh, sorry, Blood.
Blood kisses.
Blood Kisses.
The movie was Blood Kisses.
It's about vampires.
So you
I
do
know
remember
that.
that movie, is what you're
I
saying.
remember the title of the movie. I was
She
in.
remembers it.
Were you a victim in Blood
I
Kisses?
told I was like probably corpse number 6. I don't know. Like, I always thought if I moved to New York, the one show I would do, because every actor does it, is Law and Order.
Yeah.
I never did Law and Order.
Law and Order.
And I always thought if I got on the show, I probably would be like girl on corpse thing, you know?
Yeah, you were the corpse. You're very good. You're typecast as a corpse.
Yes. So apparently, I could stay still really well.
I can see you breathing. I can see you breathing. Stop
funny.
breathing.
But so IMDb is what you're looking at, the Internet Movie
Yes.
Database. So I created that years ago, and I haven't touched it till recently, because I'm, having the podcast, they say to put your podcast on there. So I'm starting to put Holistically Speaking on there. But I lived in North Carolina, which at the time was like number 3 in filmmaking in the country. It was
Right.
called It was called Wilmingwood. Wilmington,
Oh,
North
really?
Carolina was Wilmingwood. It was the Hollywood of the East. I mean, so much stuff was shot there. I mean,
Wow.
I did like One Tree Hill, Dawson's Creek, Surface, all those shows,
Oh, that's right. I
And
remember.
Army Wives, all those shows that were shot there. And then I did a lot of independent films, like, the
Blood Kisses.
well-known, never-known, nobody
Will-
has any idea what
Will
you're talking
Will
about.
to Power.
Will
Will to
find
Power
that.
was a good movie.
That was a good one. You were
Wesley
Megan
was a great
McGee.
movie.
Yeah.
Megan McGee, right? And then I did a really good movie that was about John Wesley, who created the Wesleyan Church,
Fun.
called what
gotta
was
put
that
that on
movie
there.
called?
It's
Is
not
it
in
on
there.
there?
This
No,
is
it's
called-
on there.
Oh, I
I
didn't
know
see that
it's.
one.
I think it was just called Wesley.
Okay.
Yeah, Wesley was actually a decent film, and I got to play Mary Musgrove, who was. She was.
She's dead?
She's long dead. 'Cause so is John Wesley.
was not
No, I
playing-
mean when
she
you
wasn't
were
playing a
when you were
corpse.
playing, you
No,
weren't
she
playing.
was-
Dead Mary Musgrove.
No, she was alive. She was alive and
Mark,
well.
She actually talked.
Knitting.
You talked in that
Right.
role, right?
Yes.
I
Speaking
did,
role.
and I actually had to create the accent because she was part Cheek
let's hear it.
Indian. No, I don't.
Come on.
I don't know how to do that anymore.
Sorry.
It's so derogatory too.
Oh, true.
No, I don't
Good
know.
point.
So I actually have had I find this really, I'm very grateful for this. One role that I actually created, that was created for me, was a tour I did for 2 years where I played Sacagawea.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
And
that's
the role
cool.
was created for me, and I toured education. It was an educational
that's
tour for
awesome.
students, and I got to play the role.
That's
And
neat.
it was, and so Sacagawea, or Sacagawea, actually is how you would say it. We've butchered it in the American language. Sacagawea and Mary Musgrove were very similar. They were Native American women that were like the catalyst or the liaison between the British or American person
Cool.
that they had to. They
Very
were
nice.
they were kind of Americanized in a way, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't want to stay in that film. You weren't like in the film industry. You were.
No, you know, and
It wasn't your gig. It wasn't your bag.
I enjoyed doing filmmaking. I really love doing live theater. In fact, I
Yeah.
miss live theater. I
You
sing.
can still go back.
I will.
Yeah,
I know at
yeah.
some point I will. I don't know if I would do it as a profession, but for a number of years when I was doing professional theater, I loved it. I worked with unbelievable talent. You know, probably my favorite was working with Lou Diamond Phillips in The King and I.
How
Wow.
about
That was fun.
That's
and,
awesome.
and he was the king also on Broadway. He was Tony nominated for that role. And Paul Sorvino was fun.
Wow.
I
Those are
did
really
Fiddler on the
cool
Roof with Paul.
callbacks.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So-
Okay, I have another question. I'm worried we're going to run out of time since we're live, but okay. You talk about your words of the year, right? So, like, I saw that one thing where it was 2019, focus and thrive.
Focus and thrive.
2020, create and connect, which we couldn't really connect, so that one of those words.
Yeah, right.
So
Right.
you come up with these
Of all the
words in
years.
January.
You can connect though. We
We
needed
connected.
it.
We just it was
Right.
like a different way of
My
connecting.
big thing back then was like they were always talking about social distancing. I was like,
Yeah.
you don't have to socially distancing does not mean social disconnecting.
Oh,
That's what
there
I
you
kept
go.
saying that
I like
year.
that.
Yeah.
Why do you come up with these words? And like, what was 2023 and what's 2024 going to be?
You know, I'm still undecided on this next year, but 2023 was amplify.
Just one word.
How so?
I felt like I've always said this, and I've been quoted numerous times saying this, that my voice and connection are my superpowers. And having a podcast to me, I find a responsibility. It's a responsibility,
Yeah.
as you both know. And knowing the work that I do in emotional well-being and mental health, I see it as a responsibility, and I'm using my voice and my connection to amplify the message. Because the podcast isn't about me. The work that I do is never about me. It's about what can I do to amplify the message of better health, better living, holistic living, and really being your best self. So to me, this year is about amplifying. Next year I have some ideas, but I usually release that.
Oh, you release that, and so we
telling
get back to you in January. So what do you think about next year, though? If you don't know your words, like what's going to be happening? Like what's in the future for you?
I feel there's a lot of positive people around me. I have wonderful people in my life, you know, one of which
You're
is sitting.
referencing anyone in particular?
There he is.
My delightful boyfriend that's sitting over
Hey,
here.
there he is.
The
I knew you were gonna get a wave.
studio audience of one, Chris.
We got to ask you about the Weebles mantra. Your mother would
The
like us to-
Weebles. Oh, my mom. Good. My mom is like my producer over there.
I love
Bev.
this.
I have wonderful.
We running out of
family.
questions for you?
What is mom
She
saying?
instilled it in
Mom
you.
wants to ask you about the
Weebles mantra she
Yes.
installed in you.
Yes, this is a good one. Thank you, Mama Bev. But to go back really quickly to what
Yeah.
you're saying, I think going forward, it's just letting go and releasing, surrendering to your plan.
Love
Yeah.
it.
I really realized that is the moment I realized two things, and Chris will agree with me on this one, is that if you want something to happen in your life and you make a list of that which you want to happen, you need to be the list first.
Be the list.
Make the list be the list. You can't ask for things outside of yourself and not actually have them within.
Yeah, we're human
Right?
beings, not human doings.
Thank you.
That was profound.
God, she pays
Right?
attention.
I did not make that up.
Right,
And everybody
like we
knows.
are human beings before we're human doings.
Right.
But if we're asking for things outside of ourselves and we're not being the list, then we're asking for something to actually be that for us.
Right.
Right?
That's good.
So that's a big thing. And then really we make these plans all the time. We get worked up. This isn't working out. if you are not, the most important thing, and I'm not the only one that says this and talks about this, it is really about releasing, it's about letting go, it is about being present, it's about trusting that things do work out. When we hold on to something so tight, it doesn't do anything to make it happen any faster.
Right.
When we worry about things, and my mom will be the first one to say this because my dad used to call me a worrywart. When we worry about the unknown, the uncertainty, it doesn't make it happen for you faster. So just be present with what you're feeling, what you're emoting, and realize that if I let go, if I surrender to my plans, if I'm just present and just put out there that which I want or desire, and just let it be known, see what comes back to you when you do that. The Weeble story is don't ever forget that you can get back up if you fall down.
I love it.
Because if you remember,
that's a
Could
good
not push
mantra,
them
Beth.
I have a bunch of Weebles. I have some antique ones that my mom gave me. I have my
love
original one. And the
awesome.
whole idea of the Weebles is Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down, right? So when you're teetering, you're always going to get back up. And that's something that my mom taught me, you know, and we all have Weebles. My brother, myself, all the grandkids, great-grandkids.
Nice. I love how involved your mom still is.
I know,
She's
that's so
she's
awesome.
on
My
here.
mom's
Tell
like
the
my
story.
aunt.
Tell that story. I love it.
I tell her I'm going to be on camera. My mom has never missed a show, a theater show,
that.
That's
and
awesome.
she made that promise, and I think she would have done it before.
Yeah.
Before my dad even passed, she said I won't miss anything.
That's awesome.
You know, she comes to my havening happy hours.
Well, let's talk about your Havening Happy
Yeah.
Hour, because I want to make sure we get out all the
Yeah,
things
for
that you
sure.
have to get out before we have to
Sure.
end the show.
So I have a monthly experience that I offer people for free called the Havening Happy Hour, and this is my way of making people aware of what havening is, letting you know what it is, asking questions, but also going through a guided experience doing self-havening. It's virtual, so anyone in the world can join, and I've changed the times a couple times because I'll have people across the pond from like last week, New Zealand, week before, month before, London, all over. Like I have people all over the place, so I'm trying to find that perfect sweet spot time, or I'll switch it from like a noon to a 7 p.m. Eastern time.
How can they sign up? Is it on, it's on your website?
I will actually, I haven't arranged my next one yet because we just did one last week and we're jumping into the holidays.
Okay.
So I want to make sure, the best thing to always do is just sign up for my newsletter because it goes out in my newsletter. The newsletter is hilaryrusso.com/thrivehive because you're part of my Thrive Hive. And when you sign up for that, you'll get all the information on when I'm speaking, when I have workshops, when my Havening Happy Hours are, the next podcast guest, which we just released one today on National Gratitude Day, Month. And basically, it just gives you a way to learn a little bit about havening and just be kind to your mind, you know? And it's my gift that I did all through the pandemic. I did it every week for like the first 6 months.
Great.
To give people tools to self-soothe, for self-regulation. And I just decided to bring it back. I mean, it's an hour of my time. We do games, brain games, we have fun, we sing, we do music, we do movement, and we do mindfulness. And that together just makes a really fun experience.
Awesome. What else is going on? What else did you want to tell us about?
What's coming up? Where are we? We're in November.
November.
Well, I'm speaking at the upcoming
Oh, the
PodFest
Podfest.
Expo
Yeah, I
in
really wanna go to that.
January.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple other conferences that I'm still nailing down that I'll be speaking at, because the big thing for me is really the secondary traumatic stress and secondary trauma, how you can really be kind to your mind, the brain candy, as I call it.
Yeah.
So the best thing to always do is just sign up and sign up for my newsletter because
Info
it's
will
fun.
come.
I have fun with my newsletter. I'm working on my book.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Not
What
done
can
by the
people-
show.
What can people expect if they sign up for your podcast? If they tune into your podcast?
So absolutely, thank you for asking me that. So holistically speaking is inspiring stories of trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor. And I have guests from varied expertise that come on my show. You know, people that you would recognize in holistic health, like the Dan Buettners of the world, to the doctors that are so well known in holistic health, to everyday people that are sharing their stories of trauma to triumph. The whole idea is to let you know that you're not alone in the battle,
not alone.
even if your battle is different.
Right.
And what people are doing in their everyday life to turn that mess into their message.
Right.
And I've been really
Oh, I
fortunate.
like that. Wait, say that again.
Turn what people are doing to turn their mess into their message.
Your
you
mess
know?
into your message.
Yeah, and we all have
awesome.
a story,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's the most beautiful thing that I could possibly give back is giving the space for somebody to amplify their message. I hate the word interview, but I've been interviewing people for over 30 years as a journalist, right? And then I got into this health and wellness space. So I'm still health and wellness, but I've got the private practice, but I still have the journalism in me, and I can't let go of that. And being able to do this podcast is a gift. And, you know, it's giving me 135 episodes in now.
It's amazing.
3 years.
Yeah.
We're top 2% in globally, and it's really just. And we're doing the YouTube as well because that's now part,
sure,
right?
yeah, do the
But
YouTube.
we're on all podcast platforms, and it's just a way that I feel like every podcast guest is a masterclass in my mind.
Yeah.
Like I learn from every person.
I
That's
love
on.
it
Sure,
too. Like
100%.
every single time.
It's a lot of work,
such
though,
a
right?
passion. A lot of
It's
work,
a lot
but I
of- it's a
love
big
every
payoff.
second of it. We
Right,
always
it's
talk
a
about
big
it. Like
payoff.
we
Yeah.
love
The
it.
passion and the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the passion and the purpose.
Especially when you want to deliver something that other people will benefit from.
Yeah.
And not just tell stories.
And I will say this, the one thing that I do have coming up is that I have a podcast episode that's completely dedicated to listeners. So today I just
Amazing.
released the podcast with my guest, Teddy Droseros, who created this thing called Grateful Peoples. It's journals that he's putting in classrooms. So kids do gratitude journals.
Yeah.
But in 2 weeks, I'm releasing an episode where it's all listeners sharing their gratitude moments.
Wow.
And all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/holistically speaking. You can go to my podcast to find out about it if you want.
Awesome.
And share your story, and I will put you on the podcast, and then you'll be entered for the giveaway for one of the Grateful People
There you go.
And
journals.
we'll be
Sign
putting
up.
all of this stuff into
Yeah.
the
I know, it's
show
a lot.
notes, so don't think you've got to be taking notes.
Right.
It's
Clem,
a lot.
Clem's inspired. Thank you, Clem, for watching and talking to us. And
Yay, Clem.
Thank you, Hillary, for everything.
amazing.
I could talk to you all
As
night.
always.
But we have to go.
We do.
But thank you, guys. Thank you for our first live show,
Yes.
Gurus and Game
Thank you,
Changers.
George. Thank you, John.
See you next week.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank George, John, Eric,
you,
Chris,
everyone.
everybody.